But after nearly 6 weeks, lawmakers finally took the first step to ending the stalemate yesterday, after a number of Senate Democrats backed a Republican funding bill to reopen the government until the end of January. In a 60-40 vote, a group of moderate Democrats broke from their party and voted with Republicans on legislation that funds the government and holds a later vote on extending Affordable Care Act tax credits that expire January 1st. If it sounds familiar, it's because it's what Senate Majority Leader Thune floated to me just 3 weeks ago.
So this is just another example of how, had they done what they were supposed to do in the first place, this would have all been over, right? So the Senate Majority Leader had already told them what the most viable option was, and it actually took this long for any Democrats or enough Democrats to come over and say, hey, let's use some common sense and do it the way we should have been doing it. But they were just going to let everybody suffer. So let's let her keep going.
How it could end. Anyway, this deal includes a mini package of appropriations bills that funds military construction, Veterans Affairs, the Department of Agriculture, and the legislative branch, as well as a stopgap funding measure that ensures the full government remains open until at least the end of January of next year. The bill also includes language to undo federal layoffs imposed by the Trump administration during the shutdown, which began, of course, on October 1st.
Okay, you guys can call me cynical, but my question is, which government employees got their jobs back? Now, I know there are lots of government employees who come in and put in the blood, sweat, and tears and actually work hard, but there is a reputation of government employees who really don't do much, right? They'll sit there, you've heard some of them brag about, oh, I can't get fired, and not really producing a lot. And I've even heard that from people who actually are or were government employees, just all over social media, about how they had coworkers that did absolutely nothing but charge the taxpayer. And I was hoping that if anybody left, it would be those people who are basically ripping folks off. But, it is what it is. And, there's also the matter of these Obamacare subsidies, right? Like, have the Obamacare subsidies even been viable? Like, I don't know too many people who are saying that they have helped long term. And I think it was only supposed to be a temporary matter anyway when we had COVID for those to keep going. But let's see what happens.
This agreement does not, though, guarantee health care subsidies will be extended, as Democrats have demanded for the entirety of this shutdown. And that's angered many of them who say Americans want them to continue to fight for something substantial. Some of the senators that voted with Republicans, though, spoke out about their decision last night.
We were in a situation where SNAP recipients were suffering, and there was no guarantee we would ever get to an ACA solution. Now we've got robust SNAP funding and a guaranteed vote, not a guaranteed outcome, but a guaranteed vote on ACA tax credits.
I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement, but waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome. It would only mean more harm for families in New Hampshire and all across the country.
The problem is we are closer to the possibility of work on the ACA tax credits for the people of this country than we were yesterday and than we were a week ago, 2 weeks ago, or a month ago. So this agreement tonight is a win for the American people.
Now, we saw those couple of senators come up and talk about why they voted the way they did. And it seems really sensible, right? But my question was, to the rest of them that are holding out, it seems like it is really crazy to be holding out for a whole bunch of nonsense and a whole bunch of subsidies for healthcare that we don't even know if they will work or not, but they are keeping the government closed. They are keeping air traffic held hostage. They are holding hostage payment. They are holding the payment hostage to military, to law enforcement, federal law enforcement, just basically to every government employee. And we've got to ask ourselves, is this really worth it? Like, I'm looking at this like, is it really worth it? Like, when you look at the stuff they bought up, the reasons why they came over, good reasoning. I'm glad they came to their senses, but why are the rest of the Democrats holding out? And are those people that you should really be voting for?
That's a live ball for debate up on the Hill among Democrats. Meanwhile, the Senate is scheduled to reconvene at 11 a.m. this morning, at which point the package has to clear a handful of procedural hurdles, and that could take days to work through, except if Senate magic prevails, because if all senators agree to speed up the process, it could move quickly. But it only takes one senator to object, and drag this process out. Congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, Max Cohen. So, Max, you were on the Capitol late last night. I was working the phones from home. I think all of this was kind of where we were rolling last week. The election kind of made Democrats say, hey, isn't there more we should be fighting for? And there are many of them who still feel that way. But how did this shake out? I mean, how did it come together in the end?
Yeah, I think this group of 8 moderate Democrat senators are key to this agreement. They saw that Donald Trump and Senate and House Republicans were never going to guarantee them an outcome on health care. And as Shaheen said in that clip you just played, the longer this dragged on, the more they were concerned for their most vulnerable constituencies, those who rely on SNAP funding and federal aid.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time anybody in the lamestream left-wing media says anything about this being the Republicans' fault, I want you to look at these photos. Senator John Thune actually had these on the Senate floor when he was discussing reopening the government the 14th time the Republicans tried. And I want you to just look at these quotes by all of these Democrat senators, just so you can know when the lamestream media talks about how, you know, the vulnerable constituency and how people are vulnerable for food stamps. I just want you to see what the Democrats actually think of their people.
Funding. So they said, look, the best we're going to get is this appropriations bill, which has a lot of Democrat demands in it. And reversing those layoffs is huge.
Yeah.
And they said, we're going to get a vote on ACA. That's the best they were ever going to get in a Washington that's, let's remember, controlled by Republicans.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, that's exactly what Majority Leader Thune said to me when he came on MSNBC just a few weeks ago, saying, I can guarantee Democrats a vote. I can't guarantee them an outcome. And that's all about where you set the vote thresholds, not to get too nerdy with it, but it's a 60 vote threshold versus a simple majority. And I think that makes all the difference. So we'll see come December. And my understanding from Democrats is they really want to use the next few weeks to keep the pressure on and the focus on health care. But I think there's tea leaf reading to be done, and I know you and I both were doing this, in who voted for it and who didn't. The fact that none of the vulnerable senators up in 2026 put their name as a yes, I think says something. What do you see here?
Yeah, let's just look at Jon Ossoff for a second, right?
Yes.
He's up in Georgia. He's the only Democrat running in a state that Trump won, who's up for re-election, and he voted no. And I think that shows where the liberal base is. He's betting that he did not want to risk the anger of his Democratic and progressive voters in Georgia, because across the country, candidates running in tough Democratic primaries are uniformly opposing this bill. Yeah. Many trading their anger on Chuck Schumer, who again voted no. But you look at where the energy of the Democratic Party is. They were told for weeks, we're going to fight for health care. We're not going to cave. They're not happy this morning at all.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to know where the Democrat Party is pointing, I think you need to understand that everybody who voted to open the government is either, like they said, in a Trump won district, or they're on their way out. They're retiring. They're no longer going to be in the Senate. That seems pretty alarming to me when you think about it, for what lengths these ultra progressives are willing to go to, who they're willing to sacrifice just because they hate Trump. They're willing to starve out people. They're willing to keep the government closed. They're willing to not pay people, all for just what is really just something that makes no sense. Just like for Obamacare subsidies, which aren't working anyway. For illegal healthcare for illegals, but feeding Americans seem to come second to these people in their hate for Trump, and that is just insane to me.
I think it kind of goes back to the question that I know I've asked others on this program, and I've even asked myself and my sources, which is anything ever going to be enough for a Democratic base that just feels so trodden upon by the Trump administration? They feel so trampled that all they want to see is fight. But at a certain point, fights have to resolve. Or do they not? I mean, what is coming down the pipeline for someone like Chuck Schumer, who, even though he played this literally the opposite way that he played it in March, people are still so furious with the way that he led the caucus at this moment?
Yeah, I think you just have to look at some of the online calls from candidates and Democratic House members yesterday who were saying very clearly Chuck Schumer is not up to the task. Yeah. Even though he voted no, the argument these progressives are making is he could not control his caucus. A good leader can control the votes, and he let 8 of his own members vote for a package that the majority of the Senate Democratic caucus did not want. And I'd say the majority of Senate Democratic voters don't want either.
I find what he said just really interesting about what Democratic voters want. I think if you have Democratic voters who are voting against their own self-interest and who are just voting on things that make absolutely no sense. Their opinions make no sense. The way they want to take the country makes absolutely no sense. Maybe that far left arm of the Progressive Party, or the far left arm of the Democrat Party, which is really progressive, however you want to say it, should not be the people you should be listening to. I don't think many of the progressive voters that are voting these days have a lot of common sense, or I don't think they really know what's best for the country or care at this point. They kind of just hate Trump, and that's really their only political thought process is orange man bad. That's not really a political platform. That's not really a way to run the country. That's just more of a slogan. It's not really a train of thought, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I guess we're going to see politically how this ends up playing out before we get to the politics. Just what's the basic timeline on when the House is going to pick this up? I mean, right now, Senator Rand Paul is sort of the holdup, as he often is in these moments of will Senate magic prevail? What do you think is the House timeline on this?
Everything's, of course, up in the air. And as the air travel issues you mentioned earlier in this segment still continue, that could be a mess. But I think what we're tracking right now is probably a House vote on the CR and minibus towards the end of the week, whether that's Thursday or Friday or Saturday. We don't know yet. But I think this situation for everyone watching at home is wrapping up, and the longest government shutdown in history is on its way to ending.
There we have it. I think that's enough to get the gist of it. Either way, I'm hoping that this government shutdown business is over and we can get back to business as usual. Hopefully a little bit more business. And you know what? Hopefully, I hope they trim a little bit of the fat, to be honest. I hope a lot of the measures like the government subsidies and SNAP and all of those I hope they found a lot of fraud, and I hope they trim it out, to be honest, because I think this whole situation has shown us that we have a lot of people that are milking government benefits that shouldn't even be getting them. And the government is misspending money in lots of different places. But that's just my thoughts. Y'all have a good one. Peace.